Okay, so we just read the Grimm's Brothers story Rumpelstiltskin. And do you want to give a recap? Then we'll talk about it.
Yeah. The story starts with a miller that wants to move up in life. So he decides to go to the king of the kingdom where they they reside at, and he offers his daughter, and he lies about her being able to um spin, I think, straw
Straw
into
into
gold.
gold.
Um, And upon hearing that, the king of course, wants to enrich himself, so he accepts taking her in. And over the course of days, um, he locks her in rooms full of straw and threatens her with death if she's not able to spin the straw into gold. And then over the days, when the girl is kind of falling into despair because, of course, a human can't really do that. This little um, magical creature or Rumpelstiltskin
This
comes
little
in.
man.
Yeah, little man comes in and kind of saves her from death by spinning the the straw into gold. However, like each day he demands like something in return. So like the first day she gives him her necklace, the second day the ring, and then on the final day, he wants her firstborn son. So yeah, and the last day she of course wants to live, so she accepts that offer but doesn't take it seriously. And because she was able to spin all this straw into gold, the king marries her and she becomes queen. And a year later, she gives birth to her firstborn child, and Rumpelstiltskin appears and reminds her of the promise she made. But he pities her when she's like very upset and doesn't want to do it. So he gives her 3 days for her to learn his name. And over the days, she comes up with names, but of course she doesn't get it right when he appears to see if she learned it.
She
So
also sent
she,
a servant out to try
mhm,
to learn all the names possible in the land
mhm.
to kind of inform her.
Yeah, so he did that, and then on the last day, they had to find out his name. He, the messenger overhears Rumpelstiltskin saying his name in a little cabin in the woods, because he's busy rejoicing early about uh, his name not being discoverable and how he'll get his hands on the child soon.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, the messenger tells the queen, and then he comes and is shocked to find out she knows his name. And in a rage, he stomps his foot down on the earth, and he stays stuck there. So when he tries to get out, he somehow rips himself in two, and that's the story.
Yeah. And yeah, the servant seems to describe where he lives as a kind of borderland or something. Mentions like the border, but the edge of the forest, and then like a mountain. And he's in front of his house with a fire. And also, he says, like Rumpelstiltskin, today I bake, tomorrow brew, and the next I'll have the young queen's child. And then, ha. Glad am I that no one knew that Rumpelstiltskin I am styled. Yeah. Yeah, what do you think about this story? This is one of those few stories from childhood that I sort of remember.
Yeah, like actually, I didn't hear this. I wasn't too familiar. I did kind of hear it, but I never really heard the full story or anything.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I just thought of how all the characters around this girl were greedy in some way, and wanted to take things from her or wanted things from her. So
Hmm.
I thought of her father for wanting status, then the king for wanting physical, like material wealth, and then
Hmm.
Rumpelstiltskin wanting the child. So
Hmm.
yeah, there are just all these interests in her that
Yeah, the whole
weren't.
story revolves around her, but in the end, I mean, she is like, it's interesting. She kind of just stays in a series of rooms and everything revolves around her, and yet she is the one that ends up with the most
Mhm,
in a way, although the king also ends up well, and even though he seems greedy, uh, he, he still only went from a king who's presumably well off to a king who's rich, and she went from being a poor miller's daughter to a rich queen. So I guess she moved up the most. I guess the thing that stands out to me most is that this story is kind of about magic, you know. I mean, fantastic things happen. A miller's daughter is raised to the status of a queen. A straw is spun into gold, but also there is this idea of, paying a price, and she's supposed to pay the ultimate price. And then Rumpelstiltskin pays the ultimate price when she finds out uh that what his name is through his folly, through his sort of rejoicing in his own power and things. So there is
mhm,
that age-old theme, from Herodotus and everywhere else, that hubris leads to nemesis, that pride leads to the fall. But yeah, but then when she plays with him a little bit at the end of the story, and when she is able to say his name, then he destroys his own body, then I don't know if he would die from splitting himself in half but either way, it seems like he, yeah, destroys himself. Because the book says he tore himself in two. Is that reminiscent of like self-destruction, which is like suicide, or is that reminiscent of even like medieval torture where they would like, like uh, draw and quarter people. They would, tear people apart. But besides her being the hub of the wheel, what anything stand out to you?
just when he at the end when they're talking about how he kind of stuck himself to the earth, it kind of seemed kind of symbolic to me about how he like was kind of stuck to like whatever he wanted to gain from having a child. So kind of living in the physical kind of world in a way and kind of not elevating himself.
Yeah, 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 yeah. She got elevated
Mhm,
in status and resources from him. And apparently for him, it was easy. That's an interesting thing.
mhm,
But yeah, he ends up, and he is very much a natural and magical
mhm,
creature. I mentioned that maybe he is in some way a personification of the power of nature. The,
mhm.
you know, nature transforms things.
Yeah.
This comes from a time where people believed in alchemy,
Mhm,
and from a pre-modern time where people believed in all sorts of transformations and uh, less of a border between
mhm,
various things, like your morality and your health, or
mhm,
gods and human beings, etc. There was
mhm,
much more fluidity between these things in the pre-modern mind, and that that might have contributed to this story.
Yeah, and like I've kind of heard when I've looked into magic and stuff how I don't know if everyone has this idea, but I've heard people explain that magic works with like the lower kind of parts of life, like or like energies in a way. So literally like it works with the earth and like the things that are like lower, literally. I don't know how to explain that very well, but it's not like it's not working with like higher things in a
Higher
way.
things being more, even morally higher
I'm not
thing,
sure it was necessarily in a moral way, but
but
just
more
that
with the
it's
earth.
very, yeah, very rooted, literally. That's how I've described heard people describe what magic is.
Hmm. I don't quite know what that means. The
Yeah.
so more with the earth than with like I'm thinking of a, elements kind of worldview, more with the earth, less with the air, less with the wood, less
Yeah,
with the
and like
fire.
yeah, and I'm kind of thinking they said even like in terms of like people, like it kind of works with like your lower or like uh kind of like a lower self or something that's not like as um yeah, it's kind of hard. But yeah, anyways, it's just working lower and
Mm.
whatever that might mean, deeper
Mm.
level.
So there might, yeah, and yeah, he stamps his foot into the ground. He doesn't, I don't know, jump up and get caught in tree branches and devoured by vultures or something. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and also the fact that he puts one leg in the ground and then he's trying to take it out and he rips himself. He presumably maybe would rip himself between the legs, which is sort of like makes you think of a woman giving birth or something like that, you know. Yeah, it's just interesting that he seemed in many ways the personification of the power, the mysterious power of nature. But then once he had a name to us, is like Adam giving the names to the things in the Garden of Eden, or in an exorcism, if the priest can find out the name of the demon. Once you give something a name, it's more knowable and you can have more power over it. I mean, this is one reason why names and definitions are very important in like science, for example. Yeah, that's very, it's very interesting if we could somehow, if we knew more, could sort of link magical worldview to the scientific worldview. But anyway, yeah, there is power in a name. And once she simply knows his name, he is not able to take from her the most valuable thing that she ever produced. And it's interesting that she produced, there's probably like some kind of like idea of the value of women in this story with how like, and this links to what you said about her sort of being like used by everybody. It's like everybody, there's three men and they all are looking to get something that they want from her, which is all something different. And there's also a culmination too, and starting with her father to Rumpelstiltskin, from the least sort of specific to woman to the most specific to woman. From from like status to wealth to child. But yeah, yeah, once she let's see. And yes, so yeah, even though Rumpelstiltskin is so powerful in this. I mean, he can turn straw into gold, and apparently so easily. He just does a little work, and it just comes out, and it totally changes this girl's life. It changes a lot the king's life, and maybe the make, to some degree the makeup of the kingdom and making the kingdom richer. But still, Rumpelstiltskin, he cannot produce life. So it's interesting that, so in a way, yeah, she is the victim here of being used in different ways by three different men. But at the same time, she is the only one that can produce a child. And in a way, she is like higher than all of them, higher than the king, because she is able to transform his life, higher than her father, status wise, and higher than even Rumpelstiltskin, this personification of mysterious and powerful, but incomplete nature. And yeah, that interpretation is maybe brought home by the punctuation mark at the end of the period, with like double meaning there at the end of the story where he sticks his foot into the ground, which may be, you know, a deeper even symbolism of nature and the fecundity of nature. Because he's maybe like a symbol of nature, but not the full fecundity of nature. That's why, even though he's able to produce a lot of inert gold, he needs the life force, from the child. But anyway, yeah, the punctuation mark at the end of the story where he sticks his foot into the ground and in his rage, he's powerless, and he destroys himself. I don't know. Yeah, I never thought of this story as so powerful consciously, but like I said, it did stick out to me when I was a kid for some reason. So it's interesting. Yeah, and just thinking of the elements of the story, yeah, the earth destroys him. Earth is maybe, I don't know, symbolic more of female. And um, when the servant finds him, he's like in the woods in front of his house with a fire. I always think it's interesting. He's in front of his house with the fire. He's not at home. He's not, you know, in home and hearth. It's not necessarily like a scene of comfort. It's like he's in, and he's incomplete. It's this idea that, maybe that's why he needs the child too. But anyway, there's like the fire, there's the wood, but it's earth that destroys him. Yeah. Anyway, do you have any last thoughts on this story?
Mhm. No, just that when you brought up the biblical similarities with the angel of death, like taking the firstborn child, I kind of wondered about that angel of death and like him and how similar it might be in a
Yeah.
way.
Um, so yeah, there is like a few things that happen before the taking of the firstborn in the
Yeah.
Bible. But before that, it's like a series of plagues.
Mm,
But there is this idea like, let my people go,
mm,
or I'll do this.
mm,
Okay, you didn't let my people go, so then I'll do
mm,
this,
mm,
frogs and the locusts or
mm,
whatever. And then finally taking the firstborn.
mm,
But in the Rumpelstiltskin story, he's giving her something. And true, it is a series that is leading up to
mm,
the bad thing. And maybe there's a
mm,
difference here between like sort of the logic of wealth. There's maybe, and greed is, of course, an important part of this story. And maybe that's a lot, the the Moses story is more about liberation and
Mhm.
suffering. This story is more about greed. So, um, but in this story, there might be this idea that, yeah, even though wealth seems to be giving you something and you feel good as you go up, you're being set up for a downfall,
Mhm.
which she is, although she's able to like use her alchemy and turn her misfortune into fortune. I'm not sure how to finish that. It's like she's able to keep the gold and her child.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
no In the end, there's no it's he's the one. It's not the god that laughs at all humanity like in the Greek myths that she has been doing having dealings with, but it is a mannequin. The story uses that word to describe him. It's a version of a man, and the fact that he's a small man probably is
Mhm.
meaningful. But since it's a man that's doing this to her, there is maybe this way out. Maybe that's the idea. And again, to me, I can't help thinking there's something about maybe the specifically female thing. Maybe I overemphasize that stuff. I don't know, but
Mhm.
she's specific. She's able to get out of it through like an indirect way rather than like a direct way, and to have her cake and eat it too. But yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts about this?
Not so far.
Yeah, I thought this story's it's really interesting. But yeah, maybe we'll talk more about it later, and hopefully it gave people some stimulation.
That's good.
Okay.